This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
We got to talk about that old man shooting a cow in front of the bus.
Hey, Lyle.
Nothing on there works smooth.
There's got to be
Time and place.
there's got to be a lesson. There's got to be a lesson when you fire someone. So the scene, an old man's about to put a cow out to pasture, and a bus pulls up with a whole bus full of school children. And as soon as he pulls the trigger, the bus pulls right up, so they all have to see this cow's brains get blown out.
And there's no lead up to it. They didn't even need to put it in the movie. It's just this completely abstract scene. I love it.
It has nothing to do with the plot. No, nothing to do with the plot.
Nothing.
It's kind of a throwaway scene that's funny. I think the lesson here for a manager, if you're firing someone, at least what I took away, on a day where I was going to fire someone, someone who had been a problem, someone that we'd been talking about it for a while, you just never know how someone's going to react. And on the day that I fired someone, I was always much more concerned with the team who was remaining, because I think a lot of people ignore that. They ignore the team who's remaining, and they're so focused on themselves. How am I going to do with this conversation? I hope I don't screw up. I hope they don't yell at me. You're kind of focused on yourself. That's human nature. But then you're also focused on their feelings and how that person does. But I always really was worried about, how's the team going to handle this? And is it, are we going to make the team remaining uncomfortable in some way? Are we going to make them feel like their job is next? Are we going to, a lot of things to think about. And so I would always try to either do it very early in the morning or late in the day when most people had left, so there weren't a lot of people around in the office. Or if we could, set up a meeting where the whole office was in some meeting, and you would ask that person to kind of come to the side. Because it's, it gives that person their dignity. They don't have to walk by all their teammates and go pack their box in front of the.
Yeah.
I never wanted to do that. I would always give someone a chance. You can come on Saturday. I'll let you in. You can pack up your things, try to give them as much warning. But is morose as it sounds that I'm comparing shooting a cow in front of a bus of kids, I think there's parallels to how you can handle a termination in an office, where you have to pay attention to where that school bus of kids is if you're going to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another scenario that is very rarely spoken about too, which is when a staff member dies. So it's often a topic we avoid and we rarely confront. And in my previous line of work, people died, and we would have to deal with that. And the way that you have to kind of go through the stages of grieving and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, you need to superimpose yourself into the shoes of the people that you're communicating to, and how could this be perceived? And a lot of us in leadership and management positions, we never ask our staff. We never ask for objectivity and say, hey, look, like, grab someone out of the team and go, what do you reckon is the best way to approach this? I mean, you've got your finger on the pulse. You understand the team dynamics at the moment. We all know this might be heading this direction. How would you approach it? And you'd be amazed at what people come up with, in order to help their peer, their peer up until that point. And so I think objectivity is a really important one. And empathy, in the sense that, how would you want to be treated in that circumstance? And what would you do to change your strategy or your approach for that? And also understanding that bad news doesn't get better with time. Like you got to hit these problems. Like, you can't just hope that it gets better. And a lot of people are like, I'll get round to it. I'll get an email out. And by then the damage is done,
Yeah.
and you're always one step behind in the narrative, and you can't be one step behind in the narrative when you're a leader. You've got to be leading the narrative.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.